So it's another Saturday, and I'm going to do a little soft-spoken ASMR today. Just want to say, again, thank you for all the support over the last few weeks that we've been doing this channel. You guys have been great to chat with in the comments, been providing me some really good feedback, and I've been listening. Some of the things that have been suggested include things like a pop filter for the audio, or certain reading materials. Like one of you recommended reading through The Witcher, which is a great suggestion. I've never read it. I have played the games though, and I love those games. But what we're going to, in the future, I'll try to do that. Some of the technology aspect requires some monetary investment, which right now I just don't have to spare, but hopefully I will in the future. But just want to say thank you so much. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for watching again. If you're a new viewer, appreciate you stopping by. Please, if you like the content, give it a thumbs up, leave some comments. Both of those really help the YouTube algorithm give these videos a little notice. And lastly, subscribe and click that bell icon, because we're going to be releasing videos every Saturday and Monday. And every now and then I might throw in a random video in the middle of the week, like I did this past week. You people really seem to like the poetry reading, so I might go back to that at some point. But today we're actually just going to return to some short stories, because last Saturday we read a couple of short stories out of this, and you all really seemed to enjoy it. The video did actually quite well. I think it was the second most viewed video on my channel since the first Iliad release. So we're gonna do a couple more short stories today. And again, since it's Saturday, this will be a relatively short video compared to our Monday videos. But again, I really like this edition. I've been trying to figure out who this is supposed to be. I assume it's one of the characters in the book, but I was thinking maybe Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, but I don't know for sure. There's quite a few fairy tales that have princesses that have to be awoken, but the fact that there's thorns and roses makes me, in the gold surrounding the frame of the book, it makes me think it's probably Sleeping Beauty, but I could be wrong. With that in mind, we'll open back up. I actually haven't read any more of this book since we stopped last week, so this will be all new for me as well. The first short story, which, by the way, this is, again, Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. The first short story we're going to do is The Singing Bone. In a certain country, there was once great lamentation over a wild boar that laid waste the farmers' fields, killed the cattle, and ripped up people's bodies with his tusks. The king promised a large reward to anyone who would free the land from this plague, but the beast was so big and strong that no one dared to go near the forest in which it lived. At last the king gave notice that whosoever should capture or kill the wild boar should have his only daughter to wife. Now there lived in the country two brothers, sons of a poor man who declared themselves willing to undertake the hazardous enterprise. The elder, who was crafty and shrewd out of pride. The younger, who was innocent and simple from a kind heart. The king said, "In order that you may be the more sure of finding the beast, you must go into the forest from opposite sides." So the elder went in the west side, and the younger on the east. When the younger had gone a short way, the little man stepped up to him. He held in his hand a black spear and said, "I give you this spear because your heart is pure and good. With this, you can boldly attack the wild boar, and it will do you no harm." He thanked the little man, shouldered the spear, and went on fearlessly. Before long he Before long he saw the beast, which rushed at him, but he held the spear towards it, and in its blind fury it ran so swiftly against it that its heart was cloven in twain. Then he took the monster on his back and went homewards with it to the king. As he came out the other side of the wood, there stood at the entrance a house where people were making merry with wine and dancing. His elder brother had gone in here, and thinking that after all the boar would not run away from him, he was going to drink until he felt brave. But when he saw his young brother coming out of the wood laden with his booty, his envious, evil heart gave him no peace. He called out to him, "Come in, dear brother, rest and refresh yourself with a cup of wine." The youth, who suspected no evil, went in and told him about the good little man who had given him the spear wherewith he had slain the boar. The elder brother kept him there until the evening, and then they went away together. And when in the darkness they came to a bridge over a brook, the elder brother let the other go first, and he was halfway across. He gave him such a blow from behind that he fell down dead. He buried him beneath the bridge, took the boar, and carried it to the king, pretending that he had killed it, whereupon he obtained the king's daughter in marriage. And when his younger brother did not come back, he said the boar must have killed him, and everyone believed it. But as nothing remains hidden from God, so this black deed also was come to light. Years afterwards, a shepherd was driving his herd across the bridge and saw lying in the sand beneath a snow-white little bone. He thought that it would make a good mouthpiece, so he clambered down. Wait, mouthpiece? Oh, okay, it makes sense now. I read a little further. He thought that the bone would make a good mouthpiece, so he clambered down, picked it up, and cut out of it a mouthpiece for his horn. But when he blew through it for the first time, to his great astonishment, the bone began of its own accord to sing. "Ah, friend, thou blowest upon my bone." Gosh. It wasn't a euphemism at the time, but okay, alright. I'm gonna try that again because it does rhyme, I think, at some point. I'm not sure. Oh, alright. "Ah, friend, thou blowest upon my bone. Long have I lain beside the water. My brother slew me for the boar, and took for his wife the king's young daughter." "What a wonderful horn," said the shepherd. "It sings by itself. I must take it to my lord the king." And when he came with it to the king, the horn again began to sing its little song. The king understood it all, and caused the ground below the bridge to be dug up, and then the whole skeleton of the murdered man came to light. The wicked brother could not deny the deed, and was sewn up in a sack and drowned. But the bones of the murdered man were laid to rest in a beautiful tomb in the churchyard. Goodness. That little poem caught me off guard. Ooh, this one's a little longer. Interesting. Usually they're only a couple pages. This one's more like 4. This next one is called Maid Malene, or Malene, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. There was once a king who had a son who asked in marriage the daughter of a mighty king. She was called Maid Malene and was very beautiful. As her father wished to give her to another, the prince was rejected. But as they both loved each other with all their hearts, they would not give each other up. And Maid Malene said to her father, I can and will take no other for my husband. Then the king flew into a passion and ordered a dark tower to be built, into which no ray of sunlight or moonlight should enter. When it was finished, he said, Therein shalt thou be imprisoned for 7 years, and then I will come and see if thy perverse spirit is broken. Meat and drink for the 7 years were carried into the tower, and then she and her waiting woman were led into it and walled up, and thus cut off from the sky and from the earth. There they sat in the darkness, and knew not when day or night began. The king's son often went round and round the tower and called their names, but no sound from without pierced through the thick walls. What else could they do but lament and complain? Meanwhile, the time passed, and by the by the diminution, I think, of the food and drink, they knew that the 7 years was coming to an end. They thought the moment of their deliverance was to come, but no stroke of the hammer was heard, no stone fell out of the wall, and it seemed to Maid Malene that her father had forgotten her. As they only had food for a short time longer, and saw a miserable death awaiting them, Maid Malene said, We must try our last chance and see if we can break through the wall. She took the bread knife and picked and bored at the mortar of the stone, and when she was tired, the waiting maid took her turn. With great labor they succeeded in getting out 1 stone, and then a second, and a third, and when 3 days were over, the first ray of light fell on their darkness. What? So I just want to, whenever I read stories like this, there's a part of me that's like, why didn't you do that 7 years ago? It was just a thing of honor at the time, I don't know. Okay, and a third. And when 3 days were over, the first ray of light fell on their darkness, and at last the opening was so large that they could look out. The sky was blue, and a fresh breeze played on their faces. But how melancholy everything looked all around. Her father's castle lay in ruins. The town and the villages were, so far as it could be seen, destroyed by fire. The fields, far and wide, laid to waste, and no human being was visible. When the opening in the wall was large enough for them to slip through, the waiting maid sprang down first, and then Maid Malene followed. But where were they to go? The enemy had ravaged the whole kingdom, driven away the king and slain all the inhabitants. They wandered forth to seek another country, but nowhere did they find a shelter or a human being to give them a mouthful of bread, and their needs was so great that they were forced to appease their hunger with nettles, which I think is a plant. When after long journeying they came into another country, they tried to get work everywhere, but wherever they knocked they were turned away, and no one would have pity on them. At last they arrived in a large city and went to the royal palace. There also they were ordered to go away, but at last the cook said that they might stay in the kitchen and be scullions. The son of the king, in whose kingdom they were, was, however, the very man who had been betrothed to Maid Maleen. His father had chosen another bride for him, whose face was as ugly as her heart was wicked. The wedding was fixed, and the maiden had already arrived, but because of her great ugliness, however, she shut herself in her room and allowed no one to see her, and Maid Maleen had to take her meals from the kitchen. When the day came for the bride and the bridegroom to go to church, she was ashamed of her ugliness and afraid that if she showed herself in the streets, she would be mocked and laughed at by the people. Then said she to Maid Maleen, "A great piece of luck has befallen thee. I have sprained my foot and cannot well walk through the streets. Thou shalt put on my wedding clothes and take my place, a greater honor than thou canst not have." Maid Maleen, however, refused it and said, "I wish for no honor which is not suitable for me." It was in vain, too, that the bride offered her gold. At last she said angrily, "If thou dost not obey me, it shall cost thee thy life. I have but to speak the word, and thy head will lie at thy feet." Then she was forced to obey, and put on the bride's magnificent clothes and all her jewelry. When she entered the royal hall, every one was amazed at her great beauty, and the king said to his son, "This is the bride whom I have chosen for thee, and whom thou must lead to the church." The bridegroom was astonished and thought, "She is like my maid Maleen, and I should believe that it was she herself, but she has long been shut up in the tower or dead." He took her by the hand and led her to the church. On the way was a nettle plant, and she said, "O nettle plant, little nettle plant, what dost thou here alone? I have known the time when I ate thee unboiled, when I ate thee unroasted." "What art thou saying?" said the king's son. "Nothing," she replied. "I was only thinking of Maid Maleen." He was surprised, and she knew that she knew about her, but kept silence. When they came to the footplank into the churchyard, she said, "Footbridge, do not break. I am not the true bride." "What art thou saying there?" asked the king's son. "Nothing," she replied. "I was only thinking of Maid Maleen." "Dost thou know Maid Maleen?" "No," she answered. "How should I know her? I have only heard of her." When they came to the church door, she said once more, "Church door, break not. I am not the true bride." "What art thou saying there?" asked he. "Ah," she answered, "I was only thinking of Maid Maleen." Then he took out a precious chain, put it round her neck, and fastened the clasp. Thereupon they entered the church, and the priest joined their hands together before the altar and married them. He led her home, but she did not speak a single word the whole way. When they got back to the royal palace, she hurried into the bride's chamber, put off the magnificent clothes and the jewels, dressed herself in her gray gown, and kept kept nothing but the jewel on her neck, which she had received from the bridegroom. When the night came and the bride was to be led into the prince's apartment, she let her veil fall over her face, that he might not observe the deception. As soon as every one had gone away, he said to her, "What didst thou say to the nettle plant which was growing by the wayside?" "To which nettle plant?" asked she. "I don't talk to nettle plants." "If thou didst not do it, then thou art not the true bride," said he. So she bethought herself and said, "I must go out unto my maid, who keeps my thoughts for me." She went out and said and sought Maid Maleen. "Girl, what hast thou been saying to the nettle?" "I said nothing but, O nettle plant, little nettle plant, where dost thou here alone? I have known the time when I ate thee unboiled, when I ate thee unroasted." The bride ran back into the chamber and said, "I know now what I said to the nettle," and she repeated the words which she had just heard. "But what didst thou say to the footbridge when we went over it?" asked the king's son. "To the footbridge," she answered. "I don't talk to footbridges." "Then thou art not the true bride." She again said, "I must go out unto my maid, who keeps my thoughts for me," and ran out and found Maid Maleen. "Girl, what didst thou say to the footbridge?" "I said nothing but, footbridge, do not break. I am not the true bride." "That costs thee thy life," cried the bride. But she hurried into the room and said, "I know now what I said to the footbridge," and she repeated the words. "But what didst thou say to the church door?" "To the church door," she replied. "I don't talk to church doors." "Then thou art not the true bride." She went out and found Maid Maleen and said, "Girl, what didst thou say to the church door?" "I said nothing but, church door, break not. I am not the true bride." "That will break thy neck for thee," cried the bride, and flew into a terrible passion. But she hastened back into the room and said, "I know now what I said to the church door," and she repeated the words. "But where hast thou the jewel which I gave thee at the church door?" "What jewel?" she answered. "Thou didst not give me any jewel. I myself put it around thy neck, and I myself fastened it. If thou dost not know that, thou art not the true bride." He drew the veil from her face, and when he saw her immeasurable ugliness, he sprang back, terrified, and said, "How comest thou here? Who art thou?" "I am thy betrothed bride, but because I feared lest the people should mock me when they saw me out of doors, I commanded the scullery maid to dress herself in my clothes, and to go to church instead of me." "Where is the girl?" said he. "I want to see her. Go and bring her here." She went out and told the servants that the scullery maid was an impostor, and that they must take her into the courtyard and strike off her head. The servants laid hold of Maid Maleen and wanted to drag her out, but she screamed so loudly for help that the king's son heard her voice, hurried out of his chamber, and ordered them to set the maiden free instantly. Lights were brought, and then he saw on her neck the gold chain which he had given her at the church door. "Thou art the true bride," said he, "who went with me to the church. Come with me now to my room." When they were both alone, he said, "On the way to the church thou didst name Maid Maleen, who was my betrothed bride. If I could believe it possible, I should think she was standing before me. Thou art like her in every respect." She answered, "I am Maid Maleen, who for thy sake was imprisoned 7 years in the darkness, who suffered hunger and thirst, and has lived so long in want and poverty. Today, however, the sun is shining on me once more. I was married to thee in the church, and I am thy lawful wife." Then they kissed each other and were happy all the days of their lives. The false bride was rewarded for what she had done by having her head cut off. Goodness. The tower in which Maid Maleen had been imprisoned remained standing for a long time, and when the children passed by it, they sang, "Cling, clang, Gloria, who sits within this tower. A king's daughter she sits within. A sight of her I cannot win. The wall it will not break, the stone cannot be pierced. Little Hans with your coat so gray, follow me, fast as you may." And that will conclude our video for today. I liked both of those. It's always funny to me how Grimm's fairy tales seem to always end with someone being killed or beheaded, but that last fairy tale actually sort of had a happy ending for once. The protagonist of the story actually kind of ended up coming out ahead, which is a good thing. So, again, thank you so much for watching this video and all the videos before. I've got some new stuff coming up in the not too distant future. I am going to be reading something different on Monday. Don't worry, the Iliad's not gone forever. I was just thinking I might just throw in something, a longer video, but a different content this time. And then the following Monday we'll come back to the Iliad and continue with that. But I just thought it might be fun to do something long, but a little different. I'm also thinking I might do another poem next week, just because I really enjoyed doing that small video earlier this week. So if you like this content, please, again, give me a thumbs up, comment, leave suggestions or feedback below. I really do appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's done that so far. And of course, subscribe and click the bell. And I will talk to you guys again